Good afternoon, Iligan City.
And good afternoon, Omicron.
Now we are here today in our studio. I shall be your host, Franz Adrian,
And I, Dudley Scott, shall be your co-host.
and you're tuning in on Nutrition Radio,
Nutrition Radio.
where a healthy plate is a good plate.
And a good plate is a healthy plate.
So it has been some time since we last broadcasted, yeah?
It's been a long time indeed.
Now, aside from that, now for today's problem, a hereditary disease called sickle cell disease.
A hereditary disease. Will proper nutrition help such a disease?
We'll find it out today on Nutrition Radio.
In a tragic, ironic fate, unfortunately, a nutritionist from last time, along with his cousin, currently were diagnosed with such a condition, this sickle cell disease.
So we decided we'll talk about this disease. Mr. Sumagang and Dr. Enrique, do you have anything to say?
The tides have turned, unfortunately. We knew from the start that we have SCD. It was only a matter of time for the gene to activate.
Yeah, I also have such disease. I expected it and now it's here.
You think there's someone who can help us with this area of expertise, Dylan?
And now, let us introduce our geneticist.
Hello, I am Dr. Matulak and I am with my assistant here.
Yes, I'm Dr. Balaba and we will be interviewed about genetics.
Mr. Balaba, that is a familiar name. Have I met you before?
You don't remember, Franz?
No.
Let's just move on. Now then, please, geneticist, would you kindly tell us what exactly are the diseases that these nutritionists have?
Sickle cell disease is a hereditary disease that affects the shape of a red blood cell, the cells that carry oxygen throughout the body.
The shape of a healthy red blood cell is usually round, so it can seamlessly move throughout your blood vessels. A sickle red blood cell is shaped like, well, a sickle. This shape blocks the blood vessels, hindering blood movement throughout the body.
Tell me, Mr. Enriga, as a child, were you easily exhausted or had lots of infections?
Yes, as a child, I remember that I couldn't catch up with most of the kids that I played with, and I vaguely remember that my mother said that I shouldn't go away out very much because I could catch infections very easy, unlike the other kids. She also said I had anemia.
Having anemia as a child is possibly an early symptom of SCD. You also mentioned that you had frequent infections. Those two you mentioned earlier are both an early symptom of sickle cell disease, unfortunately.
As we all know, the two of you are geneticists, and you mentioned that it is a hereditary disease. So, in a biological way, how does one get such disease?
Well, there are lots of types of SCD. The specific type of SCD a person has depends on the genes they inherited from their parents. People with SCD inherit genes that contain the instructions or code for the abnormal hemoglobin.
But in Dr. Indriga and Mr. Sumagang's case, it is safe to assume that they have a common type of SCD, which are either HBSS or HBSC. To know exactly what kind of type they have, a simple blood test is the standard procedure. However, since we do not have that kind of equipment, we will just have to assume.
For HBSS, one must have inherited two genes, one from each parent. The code for the hemoglobin S, which is an abnormal form of hemoglobin that causes the red blood cells to become rigid. This is also known as sickle cell anemia.
And for the HBSC type, people with this type of SCD inherit one parent's hemoglobin S gene and the other parent's gene for a different type of abnormal hemoglobin called C. SCD in this form is usually milder.
That is pretty new to me.
How can we diagnose and know what type of SCD our guests have?
Well, a blood test can be carried out to know what type of sickle cell disease a patient has. A blood test can detect the type of anemia, I mean the hemoglobin that causes the sickle cell anemia.
Since SCD has a possibility to induce convulsions and stroke, a specialized ultrasound machine can determine which if children are at a higher risk of having a stroke.
Yes, but first, let's take a quick break, and we'll be back after this advertisement.
And remember to stretch your body and drink plenty of water.
Nutrition Radio. This is the story of sickle cell disease. Sickle cell disease affects the red blood cells, which transport oxygen from the lungs to all the tissues in the body. To perform the vital task, red blood cells are filled with hemoglobin proteins to carry oxygen molecules. These proteins float independently inside the red blood cell's pliable, donut-like shape, keeping the cells flexible enough to accommodate even the tiniest of blood vessels. But in sickle cell disease, a single genetic mutation alters the structure of hemoglobin. After releasing oxygen to tissues, these mutated proteins lock together into rigid growths.
Rods of hemoglobin cause the cell to deform into a long, pointed sickle. These red blood cells are harder and stickier and no longer flow smoothly to the blood vessels. Sickle cells snag and pile up, sometimes even blocking the cell completely. This keeps the oxygen from reaching the variety of cells, causing the wide range of symptoms experienced by people with sickle cell disease. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, and don't forget to check out our other videos in our channel because we focus on topics like these with these kinds of videos. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.
And we're back. You're tuning in on Nutrition Radio.
Where a healthy plate is a good plate.
And where a good plate is a healthy plate.
Geneticists. Is there any way to cure this sickle cell disease?
Fortunately, there has been a cure for SCD through bone marrow transplant, and it has significant risk. The procedures can be more dangerous than the disease itself. But there are treatments and prevention that you can practice so that the effects of the disease can be minimized.
You can start by simple changes in your lifestyle. Consume plenty of water. Avoid environments that are too hot or cold. Or avoid places that expose you to high altitudes and that exposes you to low oxygen levels.
There are also simple steps that you can follow to prevent infections caused by SCD. You must practice proper hygiene and avoid cross-contaminating foods and other consumables.
Vaccines can also protect against potentially fatal infections. It is critical that children with SCD receive all routine childhood vaccines.
Penicillin greatly reduces the risk of infections in people with HBSS, and it has been shown to be even more effective when it is started earlier. It's important that young children with HBSS take penicillin every day until at least 5 years of age.
Sometimes, SCD can also induce vision loss. Blood cells that change shape or sickle can become stuck in blood vessels, obstructing blood flow. This blockage can cause vision problems when it occurs in the small blood vessels in the retina. If possible, it's best to see an eye doctor who specializes in diseases of the retina.
Also, SCD can induce severe anemia. Severe anemia may require blood transfusions. A common reason for a transfusion is the sudden worsening of anemia caused by infection or spleen enlargement. Frequent blood transfusions, like stroke prevention, can cause iron overload, and iron chelation therapy may be required to reduce excess iron in the body.
There are also medicines to prevent SCD complications. Daily hydroxyurea reduces the frequency of painful crisis and might reduce the need for blood transfusions and hospitalizations.
And finally, there's voxelator. This medication is prescribed for adults and children over the age of 12. This drug, when taken orally, can help to prevent anemia and improve blood flow throughout the body. Headache, nausea, diarrhea, fatigue, rash, and fever are all possible side effects.
Yes, I took note of what you have said and I am very thankful for your explanations and recommendations.
Likewise, I am also very thankful for your advice, Mr. Matulak and Mr. Balaba.
Oh, looks like our time is up, folks. That is all for today. Once again, I am Franz Salsos, your host,
And I am Dalton Scott. And remember, a good plate is a healthy plate.
and healthy plate is a good plate. Until next time.